Always wear safety glasses when working in the shop.
The safety glasses are over here by the sink in the white cabinet here. Make sure that you are grabbing a pair anytime you're working with tools or working near somebody who has the tools. If you are wearing glasses like I do, they should still fit over the top. And if you require a different pair, come see one of us and we will get you a pair that might fit better over your glasses. Or if you've got a smaller head and these feel too big, we can get you a pair that are a little bit smaller.
Wearing safety glasses means that when you are working, they are on your face. Safety glasses should not be on the top of your head while you are working. They do not do much good up there. And if you take your safety glasses off, you do not set them down on the lens. You always set your safety glasses down when you're not working on the upper frame or the blue portion, which is exactly where we place them when we set them back in the safety glasses cabinet. At the end of the day, all the safety glasses need to be placed back exactly where they belong, sitting correctly, or we will not get to be dismissed yet.
Report all accidents, injuries, and broken equipment to the instructor immediately.
Any accident we need to know about. When you tell us about an accident, we have first aid kit and safety materials and health materials up here in Poulos' aid kit. This includes gauze, bandages, disinfectants, cotton swabs, everything we need to make sure that you are safe if there is an accident or injury to occur in the shop.
We've both been trained in first aid, and so we are going to do our absolute best to keep you safe and to minimize any complications that may happen. Wait for the tool to stop completely before you leave.
We have many different pieces of equipment in here that continue to run after you've shut them off. Examples would be the scroll saw, the bandsaw, the disc sanders, the drill presses, and the lathes. It's very important that you don't leave the machine until the machine has stopped moving, because it could be off and it still could be moving. Okay? So that's really important. Any piece of equipment you're using, do not leave it, and do not take your safety glasses off until the machine has come to a complete stop, and then you may leave. Start the machine before you put the work up to it.
When you get ready to cut on the bandsaw, you'll have a board, you'll have your saw ready, and we want to make sure that the board is not actually touching the blade when we hit the power button to turn it on. So make sure that you get it lined up, make sure the blade isn't quite touching the board, turn it on, allow the saw to come up to full speed, and then you may begin your cutting. Keep hands and fingers 3 inches away from the blades at all times.
There are no reasons or exceptions in this class that your fingers should ever be closer than 3 inches to our bandsaw blades. If you have to cut a piece of material that would require your hands to be closer than 3 inches, then you have to find an alternative method to cut that project, or come and speak with your instructors and we will help you find out a way to do it. When you're cutting, 3 inches means 3 inches to either side of the bandsaw blade and not 3 inches total. That means that your left hand and your right hand must both remain at least 3 inches away as you cut through the material with no questions asked. Do not overload the blade with excessive pressure. It will not work better and it damages the saw.
When you're doing your cuts here at the bandsaw, we're doing a lot of curves a lot of the time, and when you make those curves, it tends to put extra stress on the blades, and when you're pushing real hard, either just straight on or while you're making those turns, that excessive pressure can really damage the blade, and it also can damage your project. So what we want to do is make what's called a relief cut, where you cut close to your stuff and it allows for wood to fall away from the project while you're cutting. And those relief cuts help to eliminate any extra pressure that we're putting on that bandsaw blade.
Do not interrupt other people while they are using the equipment.
When people are using the tools, it could be the hand tools or one of the stationary tools like the bandsaw or the drill press or something like that. We want to make sure that you're not interrupting them. We want them to be able to concentrate on what they're working on. And if you're interrupting, it makes it very, very hard for somebody else to focus on the project that they're working on and use the tools safely. Work at a safe speed and concentrate on what you're working on.
This rule ties in with a lot of different rules we have in the shop. But the idea is that you are focusing and concentrating on the work before you, and that you're doing it at a safe and appropriate speed for the tool and the task at hand. This allows you to be efficient and safe within the shop for you and your peers. Adjust the blade guard before you turn on the saw.
When you get ready to do your project and you're over at the bandsaw getting ready to cut, we want to make sure that we adjust that blade guard before we start. If you walk over to the saw and that blade guard is really high, it's exposing a lot of that blade, which is very, very dangerous. So what we want to do is we want to take the piece that you're getting ready to cut, place it next to the blade, and then we want to adjust that blade guard so that it's about 1/4 of an inch above that, and then lock it into place. The blade guard should be about 1/4 of an inch above the material that is being cut.
The easiest way to do this is to loosen the blade guard, raise it, make sure that the material is next to the bandsaw blade, remember it is off, and then lower the blade guard until it is about 1/4 or 1/4 of an inch above the material you were cutting. If your material has any warps or curves, you can also rotate the material around the blade to make sure that you have 100% clearance before you cut. Make sure before you turn on the bandsaw that you tighten that blade guard in place so that it doesn't move while you're working. Never use wood that has loose knots or nails in it.
If you have a piece of wood that has knots in it, especially if it has like a black ring around it, that's where the bark had died as the tree was growing, and that knot was where a branch happened. And if you have that black ring and you have to cut through that, there's a very good chance that that knot where that branch was growing is going to come out. So we want to inspect our boards before we get ready to cut so that we don't have any loose knots that can come out while we're cutting, and also any nails or screws or anything like that in the board. Because if that hits the saw blade, those metal nails or screws will destroy the sharpness that we have on the blades. Always back out of the cut with the saw turned off and the blade stopped.
When you're using the bandsaw, often you'll be making cuts that are curved. When you're making these kinds of cuts, you'll be making relief cuts as well that take the pressure off the bandsaw blade. On some of these cuts, you may need to back out the blade from your wood. So when you're going to do this, it means that you need to shut the machine off and wait for the bandsaw blade to stop completely before you remove it. Never stand on the right side of the saw when it is running.
When you're using the bandsaw, you should be standing in the front of it. That's facing directly at the bandsaw. What we don't want is somebody standing off to the right. If we have somebody standing off to the right of the saw, that can cause problems if the saw blade breaks. The saw blade is contained within the saw, and hopefully if the blade were to ever break, it would stay contained. But the problem with standing on the right side is this is the only part of the blade that actually opens up for the blade to travel through just an open space. So we want to make sure that nobody is next to that bandsaw when you get ready to do your cutting, just in case something were to happen. If the saw blade breaks, step back from the machine immediately, stop the machine, and tell the teacher.
Bandsaw blades are what they sound like. They're a giant band. They're a piece of metal that comes all the way around and then is welded together. If a bandsaw blade is to break while you are running the machine, immediately step back, shut the machine off, and get an instructor.